Do you have any old cabin plans? I really dislike the new cabin plans. None of them look right or are laid out with a wood cook stove. Yeah, I've got some old cabin plans, but I thought, James, that I would take the opportunity of your question here to talk about the way that cabins by our forefathers, our settler forefathers and mothers, were built and the way they were laid out. They would start off with a very simple structure, and they might add on after that, go this way and then this way and this way, and pretty soon, by the time they're an older couple, they had a larger, substantially larger structure than what they started out with. We'll just start with our basic 18 by 16 foot floor plan there. It had a fireplace on one end. Our settlers were very minimalistic in the things that they had and their furnishings. Normally they would have an eating table and then a bed, then some chairs sitting wherever. And then your other, whatever you might have in there. Maybe your wife had a spinning wheel, or if she was fortunate enough to have a treadle sewing machine, that would be in here as well. It gets kind of crowded, the more kids you start having. Now, my own grandparents, Paul Mac and Nanny, that I've talked about often, they began, I guess it was in the 20s, I'm not sure, it was before my father was born. He was born in 1930. And so they began with a fireplace room, what Daddy called it. It had a fireplace, and they would sleep in here and had an eating table in there. And then came, and I don't really know the progression of things, and I had talked to Daddy about this, and he wasn't exactly sure the progression either. But I know that when I was young, the kitchen was back here, had a front porch on it. But originally, my father said that I think the front porch and maybe the back porch was originally half as long as the house, and then at some point it got extended out. This was the kitchen here. They added on a bedroom here, and then I think they added on a bedroom for my father when he was a teenager, I think. I can't remember. And I think early on, Paul Mac's mother, she was a widow. She came to live with them, and they, originally the porch was only half as big as the house. They added on a little room here for Paul Mac's mother, my great-grandmother. And after she left or passed away, I'm not really sure, that ended up becoming a full-length front porch. And of course, as most people did in the 50s, 60s, they screened in the whole thing to keep bugs out so that they could sit on the porch in peace in the evening. And that's where I remember sitting with my grandma Nanny waiting for the school bus to come out on the front porch. So they had a bedroom here and then a second bedroom. And keep in mind, there's no, you know what's missing there? Have you picked up on that? There's no facilities. There's no restroom, which the reason why was there was no running water up until about the 40s. But when running water finally came, oh, by the way, there was also no electricity up until, I don't know if my dad was living, it was shortly before him or when he was young. I think it was when he was young that they ran electricity to the neighborhood. But, they didn't have outlets on every wall, like, code, what is code? I don't know, 4 foot apart or whatever. They didn't have outlets on every wall. In fact, they had no outlets on the wall. The electricity was run to the center of the living room, which I had 12-foot ceilings. I remember it just seemed like it was forever up there to the ceiling when I was little. But there was electricity run to the center of the room, and it came down on a cord hanging, and there was an outlet on that cord along with a light bulb. And she had a long string attached to it, and I would, tie things to the string and swing them around the room. She never got on to me for that. She should have spanked me for that, I guess, but she was too kind. But that's where she would put her ironing board under that light, and she could plug her electric iron into that outlet and do her ironing right under the light. and that was the only electricity in the house for a long period of time. So back to running water. Eventually they had running water, and there was let me think about this, how this went. Let's see, there was a back porch here, and then a restroom here with a tub and a sink. Wow, they were really uptown by then. So there you have it. Restroom, back porch, kitchen, fireplace, room, which was, living room, 2 bedrooms, front porch. That was Nanny's house. That was Paul Mack's house that I remember. So that was kind of the progression of things. But again, it all started with your simple fireplace room, like most of them did. Now that house, my grandpa's house, is completely gone now. Episode number 1 of the Farm Hands Companion Show, you got to see a little bit of the interior of that house before it finally caved in, which now today there's hardly anything left but a pile of materials. In our local county, Montgomery County in southwest Arkansas, we have a very nice museum, the Heritage House Museum in Mount Ida. And at the back, behind the museum facilities, is a restored log home from the Alamo community of Montgomery County. And it's known as the Milholland home. I think that was the last family that lived in it. And it is basically started as a single pen log home. And it has an addition here to the side, which this is log. This was frame built from milled lumber, and it's got a front porch on it, and even has it used to have a well right there. They kind of rebuilt what looks like a well, although it's technically not a well. And from some of the descendants who are still living that I actually spoke to, there originally was I believe there was a kitchen on the back here. So you got your fireplace room here, kitchen on the back. I think they said this was the boys' bedroom and then a girls' bedroom on the back. The brothers here, sisters here, kitchen there. But this part has not been restored. Only this part has been restored. But you can actually visit and look through the doors and look through the windows at this structure at the Heritage House Museum in Mount Ida, Arkansas. Which, by the way, if you're ever in our neck of the woods in Montgomery County in October of the year, the museum has a sorghum festival every second Saturday of the month in October. It's a great festival to see a lot of. I'm usually there demonstrating my woodworking and so forth. But you'll be able to see the Milholland log home there and other really neat things, agricultural exhibits of our community. Since I'm mentioning festivals, you'll have to come to our Cattle Gap Heritage Festival every first Saturday, the week before the Sorghum Festival in Cattle Gap. All kinds of things you can see there. James, I hope that somewhat answers your question about simple cabin plans. If you have a question about anything we've talked about today, please leave it in the comment section below. Also, since we're on the topic of building, you may like to buy a copy of my book, Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn. Yes, it's a pole barn, but I do mention in one section in there how it has multiple uses. Aside from just, keeping your livestock in, you could, if you're a new homesteader and you're getting your property going, and you need a quick place to live that's somewhat inexpensive until you build your proper home, a pole barn can be lived in. You could even put a wood floor and perhaps in one section of it and actually live there if you're just starting out. And later that wood floor section could be a tack room or a feed room or anything else. A pole barn is reasonable enough to live in if you have youth, vigor, and a wife who's willing to go along with it. And no money. So it is an option. It'd be relatively simple to build, and my book can show you how, even if you're not a carpenter, you might like a copy of Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn. I'll have the link in the description below where you can go to buy that book and some of my other books if that suits you. Also, I mentioned my other video, adding on a side shed that you might want to give a look to. It just talks about how to increase space on your farm. You've got an existing barn and you want to increase that space, you can just add a shed on. The video kind of explains how you might be able to do that simply. I suppose that does it for today. I'm Paul Mack, and I'll talk at you later.